taking the fifth. I think it's disgraceful.
What happened? He pleaded the fifth, right? He pleaded the fifth. Fifth Amendment.
Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible. Horrible.
The mob takes the fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
You sit there, Meek, and you listen to him, and he goes, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. You're like, what's he doing? Well, obviously, he was practicing.
Well, there is that. Donald Trump's thoughts on taking the fifth before invoking the fifth more than 400 times yesterday while testifying in New York State's investigation.
400 times?
Of the Trump Organization.
He took the fifth.
How long does that take?
400 times?
So does he still think it's disgraceful?
400 times over disgraceful.
Does he think it's something you only do if you're guilty?
400 times guilty.
And does he still think it's something that the mob does?
400 times.
Well,
is he mobbed up?
We'll get into that.
Is that what he's telling us? Is this confession? Is this projection?
Plus,
only time will tell. New
information on the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago and how officials learned about the possibility of more classified documents on the property. Here's just a teeny tiny incy-wincy hint. It came from inside.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. Are you telling me the call came from the inside? Wow.
Just going to leave that there. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
It is kind of like the mob, isn't it?
Oh, boy. Welcome to
Right?
Morning Joe. It is Thursday, August 11th. With us, we have columnist
from The Sopranos
and associate editor from The Washington Post, David Ignatius. David, it's so good to see you. Let's frame the morning. Donald Trump can gaslight his supporters and grift money off of them. But the one thing he can't do is erase history. It's not just that he used to mock the Fifth Amendment before invoking it yesterday, hundreds of times. It's also his attacks on FBI Director Christopher Wray, a man whom he nominated to the job as, quote, impeccably qualified individual and a model of integrity.
A model, Donald Trump said, Christopher Wray was a model of integrity.
After all, why would the feds be worried about top secret documents floating around Mar-a-Lago? Remember when Trump and his top aides coordinated their response to North Korea's missile test in full view of club members who then posted pictures of it on Facebook? Or when a Chinese businesswoman made her way onto the grounds of Mar-a-Lago with a purse full of electronics, she was sentenced to prison. Well, lucky for the ex-president, he has supporters like Rand Paul of Kentucky, who once called Trump a fake conservative clown, but now parrots a conspiracy theory that America's top law enforcement agency was planting evidence. Let me circle back. Christopher Wray, put there by Trump. Put there by him, Joe.
A man of integrity. David Ignatius, we haven't talked to you since this all came down. Obviously, when you have the FBI going in to a former president's home, there's going to be people on both sides wondering what's going on. We've, of course, heard some voices from the right, Washington Post columnists saying that the DOJ needs to be more transparent. We have Walter Isaacson, a very respected newsman who was on our show a couple of days ago saying the same thing, that the DOJ needs to show their hand a bit more than usual and let Americans know why they did that. But you talk to legal scholars and they'll say it's not the DOJ's job, it's not the FBI's job. They don't do what Comey did during the 2016 election and keep a running commentary going while pursuing possible criminal charges. I'd love to know what your take is on where this is, what the DOJ's responsibility is as far as transparency goes.
Joe, the first thing I think is that as you look at all these different investigations, you just see this classic picture of the walls closing in on somebody who is suspected of criminal activity. This is a multi-directional series of probes. Most of them go through the Justice Department, but not all. Our Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is the most reticent Attorney General I can remember. I began covering the Justice Department in the late 1970s. I don't remember an AG who spoke more quietly or carefully. We have to remember Merrick Garland was a federal circuit court judge. He was nominated for the Supreme Court. He has what we call judicial temperament. He is cautious. He's conscious of the rules that guard prosecutions. He wants to make sure that those rules are enforced. Grand jury secrecy is absolutely central to our system. Grand juries collect information in secret, and prosecutors should not disclose it. But he's also conscious of his role leading the Justice Department in this divided time where he is now a subject of personal attacks by the Republicans. So I would guess that in coming weeks he's going to say a bit more about what the department is doing. He, for the last year, has said he's going to be conducting a wide-ranging investigation of the insurrection on January 6th, using every U.S. attorney's office in the country, every FBI office. He's said that openly, publicly, repeatedly. We're now beginning to see the fruits of that investigation. People didn't believe Merrick Garland when he said that this was going to be a probe of that scope, but it is, and we now see that. Each of these investigations has a slightly different beginning, Joe. There are different causes. The New York Attorney General's office investigation is entirely different from some of these others. We still don't know exactly what the FBI agents were going after when they searched Mar-a-Lago, except Trump's attorney has said they took 12 boxes of materials, which implies that these were 12 boxes they didn't get before when they went into search and took 15. There was more they were looking for. They knew what they were going after. But I think the basic point that people should remember is that Merrick Garland is an unusually careful and sensible Attorney General, and I think he'll do well. The country may focus on what's he doing. Is he being too aggressive? Merrick Garland's demeanor is going to, I think, for most reasonable people, disprove that argument.
Yeah, George Conway. Let's bring in George Conway. He's a contributing columnist for the Washington Post. George, there have been people like myself that have been saying for years that it seems that Donald Trump is above the law. You have, of course, Manhattan DAs who have prosecutors who say they've got him dead to center on criminal charges, and then the DA backs down. You have other people in the past who have backed down. Mueller investigation just sort of stopped, despite the fact Mueller said he didn't exonerate Donald Trump. But here, I guess what's so surprising about this is we're talking about classified documents, which, of course, are extremely important. But you have what's going on in New York State. You have what's going on in a larger DOJ investigation, most likely over the insurrection and over the president leading a seditious coup. And, of course, then you have what may end up being the most troubling for him, the grand jury in Georgia. I'm curious, do you agree with David Ignatius that this is just the beginning of the ex-president's legal problems? And I also am curious your thoughts on the DOJ's handling of this thus far.
Well, I do agree. This is the walls are closing in on him. There are so many different investigations, and there are also civil suits that are chasing him down. And I think bit by bit, we're finally going to see the processes apply to him. He had his deposition taken yesterday by the New York Attorney General. There are some civil depositions coming up, and he's being forced essentially to put up or shut up in these investigations. And yesterday he took the fifth 440 times, which is basically the most respect I think he's ever shown for the Constitution of the United States. But the Georgia case, I think, is particularly one to keep looking out at because it's the one that sort of seems to be moving ahead the most quickly. But I think this documents investigation is one that we haven't heard the last of. I mean, David is absolutely right about the cautiousness, the innate cautiousness, and the by-the-book nature of Merrick Garland. And I think that he's handling this absolutely perfectly. I don't think the Justice Department should be saying anything more than it already has said, which is basically nothing about this, because that's what the rule of law requires. That's what grand jury secrecy requires. And the whole point of this exercise is that nobody is above the law. The law applies to equally to you and I, to the rich and the poor, to ex-presidents and just regular citizens. And one of those aspects is, one of those protections that people have is grand jury secrecy and the presumption of innocence. And the reason why the Justice Department does not say anything about ongoing investigations except in unusual circumstances or when indictments are issued is precisely to protect the reputations of those who are the subject of investigation. And if he really thinks that there's a witch hunt going on with these documents that were at Mar-a-Lago, then he should tell us exactly what happened. Show us the search warrant. What was the government looking for, and what did they take? He has a list of what they took, or should have a list. And that would tell us a great deal, but he doesn't want to say anything because he knows it's not going to be helpful to him, I'm sure. And just as actually answering questions from Letitia James yesterday wasn't going to be helpful to him.